Welcome everyone this day. This is June 21st, 2021. I was looking to do some recordings and talking about movies and bringing back this thing that is the Chi-Rho Film Society to get a second movie in. And since today was Prime Day, if you're an Amazon person, I was originally going to do a Transformers movie, specifically Transformers the movie, but I kind of went back on that, and I got a list of movies I'm going to do throughout the course of this summer, and they all will have a theme, and I don't know if anybody will figure it out. But the first movie I'm going to start with is the movie Men in Black. It came out in 1997, the summer of 1997, and it was just before my freshman year of high school, and it was a pop cultural hit. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go into some of the backgrounds in this movie, and so and because I when I watched this movie, I just finished watching it. It's the first time I've watched this movie in years. I forgot a lot of the scenes of it. And I've seen the movie a lot of times, but I forgot a lot of the stuff. I remember, like I said, I remember it was a global hit. I mean, it wasn't just big in the United States, it was big around the world. And if you're wondering how I know that, it's because that summer, my family and we went to Finland. And I went with my sister and my dad, and we actually went to see Men in Black in Finland, and it was the theater was full. And it was kind of funny because they had Finnish subtitles, and of course it's in English, and so we knew everything that was going on. And it's really interesting to watch the movie in Finland because there's some jokes in the movie that people in Finland didn't get that me and my sister did, and so we were like the only ones laughing at it a couple times. But watching the movie again, it's kind of, 24 years later. It's crazy to think Men in Black is 24 years old. But 24 years later, there's a few things that kind of stood out. I'm just gonna kind of go over a little bit of things. First off, as I was watching the movie, there's allusions they saw to some few old movies. I'm going to come back to this scene, but I'm going to come back to this slide. But the thing I wanted to point out more is the actors that came out. So I'm going to take down my video so you can see what I'm talking about. So here you got this guy. Okay, I actually knew who he was when the movie came out, but this guy played Lurch in the Addams Family movie. All right, and so that's just one little bit. And that's kind of a small thing, because that's really all he's really known for, is being Lurch, the tall dude from the original Addams Family film, which, by the way, was directed by the same guy. What is it? The same director as Men in Black, and I gotta bring that up. Bring it up. Sonnenberg, I believe his name was. Last name Sonnenberg. I gotta think of the name of the. Or Sonnenfeld, sorry, Barry Sonnenfeld. He also directed the Addams Family films, and so it makes sense that he'd hire this big, tall dude again. But the two that really stand out to me, that stood out, and was this guy, and even looking at him, I don't completely reckon. I kind of see him a little bit, but this is Tony Shalhoub, or however you pronounce his name, who is from one of my favorite shows. Is from the show Monk. Some of you may have seen that show from time before. It's a really, really good show. Basically, kind of a Sherlock Holmesian detective about this guy that's got this a multitude of disorders, but it's an incredibly an awesome show. But anyways, this is him right here. He has a little small part in the movie. And then this guy, who's the villain, he's playing the villain. He's the bug of the movie. He's like, I want sugar and water. Now that guy. Well, he would end up being probably one of the best villains in all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which, granted, because of the powers that be, it's a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But according to Kevin Feige, he will be brought into it, and that is Vincent D'Onofrio, who played the Kingpin, or Wilson Fisk, in the Daredevil series on Netflix. And so I looked at it. I heard when I saw that was watching the movie, I'm like, man, that voice. He sounds familiar. He looks a little familiar. But dang, that's Vincent D'Onofrio. He was also in Jurassic World. You might remember him from that. And he's been in a number of other movies. But I thought that was kind of a cool little seeing where they were at one point moment. Kind of makes me wonder how far back does Vincent D'Onofrio go? Let's see here. Just going through his list. Man, he's been acting for a long time. 1983 was his first role. He was in Ed Wood, and wow, that's kind of cool. But anyways, so that's just like little bits in terms of actors that you see in the movie. And of course, the two main roles of the film is, of course, none other than, which would be Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith. And at this point, so Tommy Lee Jones at this point is a pretty well established actor, and he had been in the, let's see, look at movies he had been in at this point. Coal Miner's Daughter was a big one that he was in. Let's see here. JFK, Under Siege, The Fugitive. He was in Batman Forever just the year before. And so, or no, 2 years prior to this, he was in Batman Forever as Harvey Dent, Two-Face. So he had a bit of a career at this point. But Will Smith in particular at this point, this was the start of the breakout for his career. So I mean, at this point, I mean, he had been on the show Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which was an incredibly popular show. He had been on a few movies here and there, like 60 Degrees of Separation, Bad Boys. The year before, 1996, though, was the really, really big one, and that was Independence Day. So he was in Independence Day, which was a monster success. And so 1 year later, he takes up another Alien film, and that is Men in Black, which we're talking about here. And watching this movie again I wish I could sit here and tell you that I'd like to get into some really good philosophical or theological discussion about this movie. And I got done with it. I got nothing. I have nothing on this one. And the reason is because the movie was just pure fun and pure entertainment. I'm sure there's a worldview in there, and if I worked a little bit, I think there's probably a few things that you could find, you could weed out here and there, but it's so minute and so inconsequential that it's like kind of like a who cares. The movie was just, I mean, watching it again, I mean, the CGI, you could tell it's very dated because 97, I mean, this is just when CGI is really getting going. The first really big movie to use CGI would have been probably like Terminator 2, and that came out in 92. So this is only like 5 years earlier. So I mean, the CGI of the aliens is, you could tell, it's very rough. They still are working on the bugs. They're still working to make it look good. Like, I mean, it looks nowhere near as nice as what we see now. But even with that, it is still a fun movie. A lot of great humor, with Will Smith playing the role of the fish out of water. He's getting thrown into this reality that his world is not what he thought it was the whole time. And everything, he expects things to be one way or another. One of the things this is one little scene that I kind of appreciated in this movie that I don't think I appreciated as much when I was younger, because when this movie came out, like I said, I was right before my freshman year of high school. So in between my eighth grade and ninth grade year, one of the things I remember is there's the scene where Will Smith has to take a test. So they're trying to test him to see whether or not he would be good um, as the Men, for the Men in Black type, working for the Men in Black. And so he's sitting there in that test room, and one of the things I don't think I noticed when I was a kid or appreciated what they were doing is why are they sitting there and watching it? They don't really care about the test itself. They know it's extremely difficult to take that test right there. Like, they know, I mean, like, you see all the other guys, the pencils going through the paper, and they're having all these difficulties. It's in this really odd shaped chair, kind of like egg shaped or whatever. It looks very alien-esque. And what it is it's kind of a test of problem solving, or a test of genius. Is they're trying to see who could figure out how to effectively take this test in this extremely uncomfortable and difficult situation. And it is Will Smith's character, Jay, as he would become to known, that figures out to drag that table. It's a comedic scene, but he's dragging it. It's a comedic moment that actually is kind of smart, and it's showing that problem-solving ability, that intelligence, and all that. What they'd probably be looking for, because that's the thing, is the world that they're going into. And even like when he was in that, the scene after that, they go into this area and they're supposed to be shooting at the aliens. Boo, 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 boo. They're shooting the aliens, shooting the girls and everything. And again, it's actually a test of genius, a test of creativity, a test of seeing beyond. And, he shoots the little girl, instead of all the aliens. And they ask him, like, Jay, what was that? Why'd you do that? And by the way, I love that the guy that the actor that plays, I gotta pull this up on mine. Rip Torn is the one that plays Chief Zed, who's the one that's doing all the testing, and he was also in Dodgeball. He's got a very memorable voice. Hey, James, Lieutenant Edwards, why'd you do that? He does that voice, very distinctive voice. But anyways, why'd you shoot that girl? Why did little Jenny have to die, or whatever, or Kimmy, or whatever her name was? And I love he's coming up with these creative reasons as to why. He's like, well, I gotta look at this guy. He's not snarling. He's seasoned, man. This guy, he's just working out. I don't want to bust a guy because he's just, when he comes to the gym, he's coming with all these creative excuses. And the thing is this is actually kind of intelligent writing, because it's comedic, it's entertaining, but at the same time, it makes sense. He is going into a world where anybody and everybody could be an alien. Anything and everything is more than meets the eye, to use the term of Transformers. So there you go, happy Prime Day. He's supposed to see beyond what other people are seeing, and so he's in this situation where he he knows he messed up. He shot the wrong person, but he came up with a creative way to get himself out of it, to make it not look as bad. And that's the type of person they would be wanting in this type of a field. And so it's actually pretty clever writing between that test moment and the movement moment when they're the firing, when they're shooting, and it's kind of creative writing on the part of the writers. Let's see who wrote. I'm gonna just check. Ed Solomon is the one that wrote Men in Black. Let's see what else he wrote. Charlie's Angels. He did the Bill and Ted's films. Yeah, he does it. It's quite a mixed bag when you start to look at what he has written. Some good, some bad, but still, I mean, it's actually a well done part. And of course, the movie also has a lot pop culture references. So there's a scene where they're, uh, he's first in the main hall, and they'll look at the screen of all these people who are aliens, and you see like you see George Lucas on there, which I found kind of funny. Sylvester Stallone's up there. I think I saw. Let's see. I saw Newt Gingrich was on there. He was the Speaker of the House at the time. Um, and so, speaking of people who are undercover aliens, uh, that uh, they make a mention of at the very end of the movie is Dennis Rodman. They goes, Dennis Rodman, an alien? Well, not much of a disguise. And that's the one I remember. We were in Finland. Me and my sister were both there, and we were the only two people in the entire theater that laughed at that scene. And so that joke, because most of the people in Finland didn't know who Dennis Rodman was. So, but yeah, and it's actually a joke that probably if people listen to it now, unless you're a child of the '90s from the United States, you don't know who Dennis Rodman was, and the joke kind of falls flat. But, uh, but yeah, like I said, the movie it's just fun, it's entertaining. Um, and and it kind of even brought to memory. And so I'm going to go back to this slide here. These pictures here. So you see in the back of me, you got three movies, and there are three movies that actually came to mind. I could see the inner workings of those films, and the first one is Beetlejuice, because the very opening of the film is this. You see this little dragonfly just like flying around. The credits are rolling, and Denny Elfman music is running. And guess what? It feels very similar to Beetlejuice, because Beetlejuice has like I think it's got a fly. There's a scene where you got a fly that's kind of flying around. And then you hear you'll hear that little song, that Danny Elfman song, as it's flying around. You're following it and everything, and it falls in. It goes to the miniature model in Beetlejuice, and I could not help but see the same thing. And what's even more is the title sequence. I was just looking this up. I got to look this up again. Men in Black, Beetlejuice. So I was just looking this up. Okay, so the guy, Pablo Ferro. So Pablo Ferro is... Talk about a moment where I could give credit to a guy that probably deserves to get credit. Is this guy named Pablo Ferro. He was a... he lived from 1935 to 2018. So I don't know if he ever got... Let's see if he got any recognition. 12 Academy Award winning films. Man, the guy actually does probably deserve some type of Lifetime Achievement Award. But, so he did countless movies, the opening title credits. And so two of the movies he did was Men in Black, and he also did Beetlejuice. He also did The Addams Family, and Addams Family Values. So those are Sonnenberg movies. But makes sense that the opening credits of Men in Black and Beetlejuice would be so similar because the same guy did the same title sequence. And I'm just looking at the list of movies he did. He did Doctor Strangelove, Midnight Cowboy, man, To Live and Die in L.A. Let's see. Philadelphia, another great movie. L.A. Confidential, Good Will Hunting. Those are two Oscar-winning films. As Good as It Gets. Wow, did he do awesome in '97. So the movies he did in some of the movies he did in '97: L.A. Confidential, Men in Black, Good Will Hunting, As Good as It Gets. Wow, that guy just dominated '97. But anyway, so. He did Napoleon Dynamite. Yeah, so anyways, so there you go. Pablo Ferro. I brought a guy that you probably never knew existed. But he did the opening title sequences. So you watch Beetlejuice, when you watch the beginning of Men in Black, you cannot help but think of Beetlejuice because You have the combination of Pablo Ferro and Danny Elfman, and you got a bug. It's very, very Beetlejuice. Then there's even this allusion to Ghostbusters. I could tell, and it's kind of fitting because both Men in Black and Ghostbusters are Sony Pictures films or Columbia or whatever you want to call it. And one of the things I could not help but tell was Tommy Lee Jones and his character Kay is very, very similar to Dan Aykroyd. And the reason is because like I love it at the moment I noticed it was at the very towards the end of the film where Tommy Lee Jones, so Agent K is sitting there with Agent J. So Agent J is Will Smith. Agent K is Tommy Lee Jones, and so he's sitting there. He's like, yeah, this reminds me of the such and such event in the 1960s. You're lucky you weren't there. I was like, you weren't even alive. So it reminds me so much of the way that Dan Aykroyd as Raymond Stantz would talk in the Ghostbusters films. Like it's like the big since Tuscan Blask in 1905 or whatever. He just jots off these years and these events, and just the same way that Agent K does. Such a wonderful. I don't know if that was I'm sure that there's some inspiration there because you could definitely see it in the character. And then one other movie that I had to bring an allusion to was Animal House. Now you're thinking, what does Animal House have to do with it? Well, it has to do with the plot of the film. Right? So the plot of the film is all about this giant cockroach who's trying to get a hold of a galaxy that is inside of this little gem, this marble that's sitting. It's on Orion's belt, which I'd say spoiler alert, but the movie came out in 1997. You've had enough time to see it, but it's on this gem. It's on Orion's belt. Orion's belt is not referring to that set of stars inside of the constellation of Orion. It is it's referring to the belt that's on the neck of this cat. And on side of it there's a little gem, and it turns out that gem contains a galaxy. Well, at the end of the movie you find out it shows the after all the I think is it before the credits or after anyway, somewhere in the film. You basically see they zoom out into space and they go farther and farther, and eventually you zoom out and you find out that our Earth, is in the middle of a solar system that's in the midst of a galaxy that's inside of yet another little marble that people are just playing marbles with, and they're throwing into a bag of other marbles and all these other galaxies. And so why they made me think of Animal House is this little conversation between Pinto, and Professor Jennings. He goes, so Pinto's going, okay, so that means our whole solar system could be like one tiny atom in the fingernail of some other giant being. This is nuts. That means that one tiny atom in my fingernail could be, and then Jennings, played by Sutherland, could be one tiny little universe. Can I buy some pot? Okay, so that's the whole thing. The whole thought of that inside of your fingernail could be an entire universe, and it's actually based off of a legit philosophy. Somebody who knows better than me could know where that philosophy came from, that idea, that theory comes from. And you could come at me and say, oh, that was from Billy Bob Jorgensen or whatever. He's the one that came up with it or whatever. You could come back at me and tell me that. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. That same idea that what if our solar system is really inside of a marble? I mean, that's about as complex as this really gets. I mean, there is some neat little ideas, some creative things, intelligent thoughts going on in this movie. But again, at the core of it, it's just entertainment. And again, there's value to that because there's come on, all right. There's value to that. There's value to that humor. There's value to having a movie you just sit and watch and you enjoy it. And so watching Men in Black and I love listening at in the credits. It's kind of interesting. The song that's so iconic. Here come the Men in Black. That song that became so iconic was a monster hit that summer. Um, it's interesting. It never shows up in the movie. It only shows up in the credits. But when it gets in the credits, it's like, you just want to just kind of move to that song. It still is. It's a catchy song. Just roll it up on YouTube and listen to it. Watch that old video. Watch it, as he's dancing with the alien and everything. It's a, like I said, it's a good movie, entertaining still. If I were to go on a 5-star scale as to how good it is, I'd say probably like a 3.5 maybe. So definitely not anything that's best picture quality. And it is. There's probably a reason why I have not watched it a lot in a long time because there are issues with it. It's not perfect. There's some times that are just kind of, I don't know, just doesn't appeal to me at moments. But like I said, it's humorous. It's entertaining. It's got good characters, and like I said, you have little moments that are kind of well written, creatively written, thoughtfully written. But so like I said, I'd say about a 3 or 3.5 stars if I were to give a 5-star scale review on it. So the next thing I'm going to go to, so next week I'm going to come back with another movie. And I guess the theme is I'm basically going through movies from my high school period, and the reason is because I'm thinking about a reunion that's coming up, and I just kind of think like what we're just kind of going back to these movies. How do they look now? Many years later. And so Men in Black, even though it didn't come out when I was in high school, it was the movie that was the hottest right before we went into our senior year. The movie not our senior year, our freshman year. The movie that came out the first weekend of high school, I looked at it, was G.I. Jane. I'm probably not going to review that. But I'm going to look at a couple other movies. I'm going to look at 2 movies at one shot next week, probably. And that is the movies Scream 2 and I Know What You Did Last Summer. And the reason is because both of those movies came out that fall and winter. And they're same genre, and it might be worth reviewing kind of as a compare and contrast. And it kind of does speak to some of the culture of the time. And so this is kind of watching through these movies might be even a good examination as to where movies have gone. And it's kind of interesting, especially because as we are looking at this, I've been thinking about, as I was going through the movies that came out during my high school years, and I compare it to, being a pastor and, working with, working a lot of time with youth, high school, middle school, whatever. I think about the movies that are coming out in their years, and honestly, they got a lot better movies than we did, especially when it comes to superheroes. 1998, the summer of '98, was the release of the movie that almost killed the superhero genre. So, almost killed Batman, and that's of course Batman and Robin. I don't know if I'll do anything with that, but I mean, there's movies like that, and I mean, Pearl Harbor came out while I was in high school. So I mean, I go through the list. There's a lot of bad movies. I mean, another movie that Will Smith would come out would be in, that's directed by Barry Sonnenfeld, would be Wild Wild West, which again had a really catchy, great song, but the movie itself was less than desirable. So it's just kind of an interesting to look at how rough those years were. So with that, I hope this was enjoyable to you. This probably wasn't as long as some of the other. Actually, well, I went over 30 minutes on this one, so I guess it wasn't that short. But again, hope this was good for you and interesting and good retrospect. What are your thoughts on Men in Black? Do you still think it holds up after these years? Were maybe there were some really good theological, philosophical, political statements, ideologies that I don't catch without going insanely dissecting of it. But and if so, let me know. But blessings. Amen.